I think that cigarettes could really disappear if everybody was able to look past their differences and talk about how to build a future that doesn't have cigarettes in it. And it's just hard because people have biases and they refuse to accept that a cigarette company can be part of a solution. And I get it. Obviously, there's a lot of history behind it. I understand where those biases are coming from, but it's just really unfortunate.
Jennifer, thanks for joining us on It Shouldn't Be This Hard.
Thank you for having me. Great name of your podcast. I love it.
Yeah, it's really all about getting into the sometimes messy and sometimes contradictory and murky world of conscious business, because it's not always that straightforward. The primary motivation was really just to explore the way that companies and social enterprises are all trying to tackle this notion of more ethical or conscious business, and really speak to people like you that are right in the middle of it, trying to manage it day to day. And needs to say sometimes those two things don't connect very easily.
It's really, the issue is not so much that doing the right thing and running a good business are not things that are in mutual agreement. They're very much in mutual agreement. That what is difficult or what it shouldn't be so hard is to make cigarettes obsolete. And that's why I loved the title of your podcast, because I've been working for this company for 10 years now. I joined in the cracks of starting the transformation, this decision to make cigarettes obsolete. And when we first started, we were very strong and convinced that in 10 to 15 years, with the right regulatory environment in the right place, cigarettes could become obsolete. And just to give you a little bit of context, there's over 1 billion people smoking cigarettes today. So to make cigarettes obsolete is as a systemic change as tackling climate change. It's of a huge magnitude. And 10 years later, there's still over 1 billion people smoking cigarettes. So why? It shouldn't be this hard. No one wants people smoking. So why are people still smoking? This is the question for me. It's not so much about the cracks or the contradiction of trying to do the right thing and trying to run a good business. I think for us, both are very much aligned. We're trying to do the right thing, and that is good for us. It's good for society. It's good for our business, but it's just hard to do it.
Jennifer, that's really the crux of the episode. So if you can think back to your professional journey, what are the key 3 parts of that journey that stand out to you that kind of brought you to where you are today?
So first I introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Motles. I am PMI's Chief Sustainability Officer. I've been working for PMI for 10 years. And before that, I worked most of my career at the UN in different capacities. I'm a human rights lawyer. And I also worked for a little bit in a law firm after I graduated from law school. So which are 3 pivotal moments in my career? This is very hard because I think I'm going to give you a bad answer, I think, but it's really the truth.
No, any answer is good.
Any answer is good. Is that I think, and I'm sure that this happens to you too, that it's funny how life works, that it's really every little moment that got you where you are today. You know, There's no this like 3 pivotal moments that you went left when you should have gotten right, and this is where you appear. It's that if I look back, there were so many moments that brought me where I am today. And I also think that if you and I had met, 20 years ago or 25 years ago, when I graduated from law school, in the plethora of ideas of plans that I wanted of how my professional life was going to look like, I never really envisioned that this was going to be it. And yet I'm so grateful for it. And so if I look back, I try to look back and tell you 3 moments, but I can't. It's really every single little decision, like I'm originally from Chile, so leaving my country, I studied in the United States, so going to university in the US, moving to Europe, like this entire trajectory of my life that eventually brought me to Switzerland and to this company and to have the job that I have today, that it's so great.
Yeah, amazing. As I think about your background then, so you have human rights lawyer background, working at the UN, and then becoming Chief Sustainability Officer at Philip Morris International. That's a zigzag, I would argue. So how did you end up at Philip Morris then? So what was it about the job, given your background and given your vocation, that drew you in?
I think that it appears weird on the surface, but actually the departure is not so much, because ultimately I wasn't particularly fond of cigarettes. I was invited to join this company right before the transformation. I was very clear that for me to join a company like this, I would do it. And I think I even said it in my job interview when they offered me a job, like I would only work for a cigarette company to make them not sell cigarettes anymore. And then when they said, okay, I was like, okay, for real? And of course, I was very skeptical. The same way many people still today, 10 years later, are very skeptical about the intentions of this company and the genuine nature of this transformation. I didn't know anything about the company. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was real. And I had my career as human rights lawyer working at the UN. I didn't want to work for a cigarette company. But then at the same time, I think that my entire drive and my entire life, what I was trying to do was to create change and positive impact, little, big, in different areas. This is what drove me to the UN in the first place. I'm a firm believer in diplomacy, in the power of bringing people together, bringing people, different stakeholders from different parts around the world, different political agendas, and finding a way to make things better. And if you think about it, this was not different. The invitation here was also to make things better. And I did pause at the time, and I did wonder, like, A, is this for real? And B, will I be able to do it? And I remember my sister saying to me, well, I mean, obviously you don't have to go, but then stop complaining that you hate smoking, because every time someone was smoking near me, I was complaining about it. And now someone is inviting you to make a change and to address that issue, and you're saying no. So how hypocritical is that? And you know what? It's so true, because if you think about it, I'm sure that as I'm talking, you're thinking about it. There are many things that we disagree with in life. And it's very easy to disagree from a distance. It's very easy to say, oh no, not for me. This I don't like. Boycott, protest, cancel, exclude, divest. And that's all good. But normally when you do that, the problem doesn't really go away. It just becomes somebody else's problem to solve. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of courage. And I don't say it for me, I say it in general, to go into those places that make you so uncomfortable, that you need to go there to change the status quo. And this is what I was doing before, and this is what I'm doing today. So even though it seems like a zigzag, it was very consistent with what I have been doing always, trying to find things that are not working and make them better, especially when they're very complex and very complicated to fix. Not that I have succeeded always, but this is what I've been trying to do all my life.
No, I absolutely love that. It reminds me of some of the conversations we have with young people, maybe just graduating college and coming into social impact or sustainability. And the question is, what can I do to make the biggest impact? And they just assume that they need to go and work for a non-profit or a social enterprise. Right. Go into a big company where you've got the resources and the support on the team to actually make a genuine transformation, because that's where the hard work needs to be done. And that's where the traction is possible. And that's where the transformation at scale exists.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the issue is not so much where you shouldn't or should go. It's more about the magnitude of the impact. Because if I was working, I don't know, in a company like Patagonia that has a beautiful business model and has been the poster child of sustainable business, as a chief sustainability officer or in sustainability, the improvements would be incremental, because the business model itself, the way that the company is constructed, is already tailored towards that. So the moment of truth and the way to really create transformational change is not to go to those places that are already working. It's to go to those places that are not working and try to make them work and try to make them compatible with the world that we want and the future that we want.
What's been the hardest part?
I think that the hardest battle for me, and I still find it very, very sad, is how biased and judgmental people, me included, we can all be, to the point that hinders progress and impairs development. I think that in order to create systemic change, and obviously I'm talking about smoking here, but not only. I mean, there's other systemic issues like climate change, like inequality, like poverty. In order to address them, people need to be able to brace through differences and sit around the table, look each other in the eye and talk about how to find compromise, This simplification and this drawing conclusions and thinking about problems in a binary way, good, bad, black, white. This is not the way to go about change. Things don't move like that, We really need to do that effort of being uncomfortable with our differences and trying to break through together. I think that cigarettes could really disappear if everybody was able to look past their differences and talk about how to build a future that doesn't have cigarettes in it. And it's just hard. It's just hard because people have biases and they refuse to accept that a cigarette company can be part of a solution. And I get it. Obviously, there's a lot of history behind it. I understand where those biases are coming from, but it's just really unfortunate.
My understanding of PMI's vision is to usher in a smoke-free future. Could you unpack that a little bit? What does that actually mean? Because I would imagine some people listening are probably still a little bit cynical.
Yeah, of course.
that, that a company is still selling 1 billion cigarettes a year despite the transformation that's going on. So Can you just unpack what that actually means?
Yeah, actually 10 years ago, we were selling about 900 million sticks. And that number, the number of cigarettes that we're making and selling today, is almost halved. And this is very important. And not just that, I think, if you allow me, because part of the skepticism and part of the cynicism comes from the inability to trust words that may appear empty. So I'm talking about a transformation and I'm talking about no more cigarettes, and you're sitting there being like, sure, she can say whatever she wants, right? And that's fair. And so that's for me where transparency and disclosure come in handy and play such an important role. If you want to make cigarettes obsolete, it's not just about our company not selling cigarettes anymore. If we stop selling cigarettes tomorrow, you know what's going to happen? People are going to smoke the competitor's brand. People will continue smoking. And what we're here trying to achieve is that really smoking disappears. And that's why it's so complicated, because you really need to work with different parts of society, understanding that we have a lot of power to drive that change, but there's a lot that is outside of our control. Understanding what is outside of our sphere of influence and engaging with different stakeholders so that they can also play their part. This is really how systems change happen.
I'm trying to connect the dots based on what you're saying, Jennifer. And what's really interesting to me is, again, linking it back to your background. So this notion of rigor and transparency and authenticity, but also this desire to step outside your comfort zone, be uncomfortable, manage division and polarity, and steer a middle way through that. Do you think then more companies should have a little bit more courage and be a little bit more transparent and not be so victim to this notion of having to be perfect? Do you think there's value and maybe even liberation in showing your dirty underwear? And being honest about where you are on the journey and being transparent about where you're not?
Well, I always think that there's value in honesty, for sure. And the first honest statement that will apply to anyone and everyone is that nobody's perfect. And recognizing that there's challenges along the way and recognizing that we cannot do this alone, us or any company, is a big, important part of being more inclusive about the approach to solving complex problems. I think that taking the weight on one company and pretending that one company will solve climate change, one company will eradicate poverty, one company will make smoking obsolete, it just doesn't work that way. And I think that our job is to explain why and how difficult it is, but also convey that intentionality. When there's a will, there's a way. And I think it's possible, but part of that possibility comes from that intentionality, from being open and inviting to work with other parts of society, in the political environment, and how this is affecting sustainability. Sure. And this is happening without a doubt, and it's not just happening in the US, it's happening all over the world. I think that sustainability has become very regulated, very political, and as a consequence, unfortunately, very polarized. But and maybe this is the unpopular opinion, but I really believe it. I think that there's a silver lining to all of that. And it's that for the longest time, especially for those who have worked on sustainability for long, by long I mean, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, you know that this area, especially in relation to business, has been forming in a way that has been very ad hoc, without clear rules, without clear parameters, without clear definitions, you know. And for those who practice in the sustainability space, that plays in our disadvantage because it creates a very ambiguous territory, a lot of ambivalence, a lot of uncertainty. You want to be able to explain what sustainability is and what sustainability is not. For example, we know that philanthropy is a beautiful thing, but philanthropy is not sustainability. We know that sustainability doesn't look the same for every company. We know that materiality plays a very important role in grounding sustainability and connecting it to strategy. And so I think that underneath all the debate, what you have is important conversations, important pressing conversations that need to be had. That we need to have them. We need to understand what needs to be measured, what cannot be measured. How do we measure different sustainability issues? How do we connect them to strategy? How do we link them to business outcomes? How do we move away from inputs into outputs, into impact? Can you measure impact? With what length can you measure it? This will allow us to become all more sophisticated, and in more sophisticated, the work will become more meaningful, I think, and it will be relevant for businesses. It will be relevant for your competitive advantage and your value proposition, your ultimate understanding of value creation. But it will be relevant for society because we will all know what is it that we're talking about. So you will think about, oh, there's a chief sustainability officer in a tobacco company. That doesn't make sense. Or does it make sense? And I will not need to explain it to you because we will all be very clear about what is it that I'm doing here and why is it that it makes so much sense. So I can sit here and have a conversation with you on how I understand sustainability, right? How I understand how material this is for our organization, how connected it is to our business strategy. But this is how I'm presenting it to you. And then you will have another chief sustainability officer that maybe will present it similar, or maybe it shouldn't be this hard. I genuinely believe that there's a silver lining to all of this. And it's that we are really pushing, as a community, we're all pushing ourselves to really think about this with a lot of rigor, with discipline, with intention, to think about how does this mean for business and how do we connect it in a way that can allow us to create a better economic model for the planet. You know, I think that academia here plays a very important role. Policymaking plays a very important role. Of course, regulation, but sustainability experts, especially those working for businesses, have something to say and to do. And I think that this is the time.
Has there been a moment that you can reflect on that changed everything for you?
What I would say is that there's for sure a moment in my career that I will forever look back, which is the moment that I met the person that hired me to work for PMI, not as chief sustainability officer, but to join the company 10 years ago. And, you know, the moment that I met him in a barbecue on a weekend. I wouldn't shake his hand because he worked for a tobacco company. And I was like, no, I'm a human rights lawyer. I work for the UN. I don't know you, sir, but no, thank you. And, you know, obviously his intention was to hire me, which eventually he succeeded. I'm very grateful for that. And over the years, in different moments of my life, I've apologized to him because I was so judgmental in my self-righteousness, and he changed my life, you know? And I resisted it. I mean, I was like, there's no way that I don't want to do anything with you or your company. And that experience taught me so much about this implacability, you know, this absolute way of judging and concluding that things are good or bad, and not even giving people or companies or situations the benefit of doubt, not holding space to understand what is happening, and that actually there's so much potential to create good, you know? And this was one of the cases. This is a company that has a history and a reputation, and underneath all of it, there are incredible people that are passionate and dedicated to drive change despite all the hardship that they experience and all the doors that close in their face because society does not accept the possibility that a company like ours can create a solution and make cigarettes obsolete. And I'm very humbled by that experience. It really changed the way that I think in general. We all draw conclusions about things, and now I always try to really pause and think about, well, how much of this am I assuming? How much of this is based on my own biases? How much of this is just me judging without really knowing? And how much could we gain by me just pausing and hearing you out, just for perspective,
Mm. If you were to try and articulate what your unshakable belief about the world is, how would you articulate that?
My unshakable belief about the world is that humankind is kind. I really believe it. I think that there's horrible things happening, but I believe that deep down there is humanity and we can find a way to make things better. Yeah. I don't give up on that.
Is there anything that continually frustrates you, no matter how hard you try?
No, it's what I told you before, Phil. I think for me, and it's not the frustration, it just makes me sad to realize how many missed opportunities there are to make things better just because people refuse to come together and listen to each other. I'm sure that I do the same. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal on a higher ground. I think we're all human, and how can this company that I think is really bad be doing something good while it's still doing something bad, but not for long? But, it's complicated. And people don't have time for complicated because life is messy and it's hard, So you sell cigarettes, so you're a bad company, so don't talk to me. And what a missed opportunity that is. Because yes, we sell cigarettes, but we sell less and less every year, and we're trying to not sell them anymore. And let me tell you, maybe if we have a chat, they can disappear faster. And again, for me, it's not just about cigarettes. It's in general. It's in general about issues that are complicated, complex, that require system change. And the first requirement of systems change is to be able to dialogue with different stakeholders, standing in different areas, owning different levers. And I think that that's the biggest barrier, communicating.
Yeah, well said. So we have our own little AI. She's called Gaia. We've been working very hard building her and trying to train her and make her a good old sustainability smarty pants. Thinking about one of these big issues then, some of these big questions that you've been alluding to, is there anything you'd like to ask Gaia? Maybe about transformation or about collaboration or about encouraging people to remove judgment and accept each other's
points of view and beliefs. Actually, I have so many questions. What do you recommend I ask Gaia? Because you know her better.
Why don't we ask her that big question? Do you think it's going to be possible to ever help people stop smoking? I'd be curious just to know how judgmental maybe our AI is or isn't. Okay. So Paloma, why don't we ask Gaia, can you imagine a smoke-free world?
Great question.
Where cigarettes have become a thing of the past?
Where cigarettes are obsolete?
Mm-hmm. Or cigarettes are obsolete. Even better. What does she say? Yeah.
Well, she said absolutely. Imagining a smoke-free world is an inspiring vision with a broader sustainability goal. Creating a world where cigarettes are obsolete would mean a significant reduction in pollution, litter, obviously, from cigarette butts, and health issues related to tobacco use. So yeah, I think she agrees with all the benefits of a smoke-free world.
Can you ask her if there are any, what problems does she see that are associated with making cigarettes obsolete? What big issues or problems?
Or challenges?
Yeah.
There's significant challenges and issues to be addressed. She shared the challenges that are most key to this transition would be cultural and social norms. Smoking has deep-rooted cultural and societal ties in many communities. So changing long-standing habits and perceptions around tobacco use would require a significant amount of education and advocacy, as well as economic impact, because the tobacco industry provides employment and revenue in many regions. So shifting away from tobacco production could impact economies reliant on the tobacco industry. And of course, regulatory frameworks and addiction. Maybe
the elephant in the room to a certain extent is still the fact that, PMI's business model is still predicated on nicotine. And of course, nicotine is addictive. And it's the very addictive nature of nicotine that drives the business model and drives people to continue the habit. So how do we reconcile that? Because regardless of the mode of delivery and regardless of the function and the form, the entire business model is still predicated on addiction.
Nicotine is not risk-free. It's a stimulant that indeed is addictive. But what is important is that smoking-related disease is not connected to nicotine use. It's connected to combustion. So it's connected to the action of smoking. So of lighting, of burning organic substance. So in this case, tobacco. And in burning it, releasing, of course, nicotine for consumption. But unfortunately, along nicotine, releasing many other very toxic or potentially toxic substances that when inhaled, they can be very harmful to your system. So for me, and this is not really an excuse or a reconciliation, but the important highlight that first and foremost, what we're trying to address are the health impacts of the products. So you have over 1 billion people that are consuming nicotine via smoking. How can you eradicate smoking? And the moment that we eradicate smoking, we can have a conversation about the value of nicotine, which, by the way, and I'm not a scientist, so I would be out of place talking in depth about nicotine. But what I do think is important to clarify is that the way that society thinks about nicotine is very entangled to the way that people think about cigarettes. So it's very negative. And the thing is that in absolute terms, nicotine has been proven to have value. And so there's a lot of medical research on how nicotine can contribute for therapeutic use in treating different diseases. And again, I will be careful in not speaking over areas that are absolutely outside of my comfort zone and my expertise.
Sure.
But we can ask Gaia if there are therapeutics use of nicotine. And what is important in asking Gaia about that, or just to pose the question, is that separation between smoking and nicotine and the harms of smoking.
Well, I'm asking Gaia, actually. And yes, nicotine does have therapeutic uses, and separating it from traditional smoking can offer clear benefits. She's happy to delve into it. Smoking cessation, nicotine is used in various forms besides smoking, as gums and patches and inhalers even, to prevent people from smoking. And these sort of therapies are more lower risk to satisfying nicotine cravings. So they actually are able to wean off of the dependence and the tolerance. There's also potential medical applications. There's benefits from nicotine for certain neurological conditions, even for diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and attention deficit disorder. But the value of spreading nicotine from smoking is reduced harm, control and awareness. Obviously, there's social and environmental benefits, and it also opens up the opportunity for innovative products.
For generations, the only way that we've consumed nicotine as a society is through smoking. Even though there's nicotine present in other plants. So there's nicotine in tomatoes, for example. So I think that because of that, we have that bias, right? We think smoking is bad, so nicotine is bad. Actually, many people think incorrectly that the cause of disease is nicotine, not smoking, which is not right. And so that's why for me, before having that conversation about nicotine per se, let's separate nicotine from smoking, understand the harms of smoking, and understand the benefits that there would be in society if smoking disappears.
It's been really interesting just to get your viewpoint and understand your worldview, and I'm sure everyone listening will very much appreciate that. I've got one last question for you, if that's okay. So what's the one thing you would like everyone to do after listening to this episode? If there's one piece of wisdom that you could impart to listeners, what would that be?
I don't know. What would be the one piece of wisdom? Drink water. Go for a walk and be kind.
In that order? Maybe.
Always be kind. Always drink water and try to go for a walk as often as you can. In that order.
Amazing. Amazing. Very pragmatic as well. I like that. Very pragmatic advice. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We'll
Great show, great name, and great Gaia.